Filmed before a live studio audience.
Hello, lovelies. So, originally I was going to make next week Invisible Sun Week, and today would have been a pretentious waffle. But I've decided to take things in a little bit of a different direction. There's just too much here to cover, and it's too expansive. So this is more of a light overview and an observation of what's in the book, what's in the box, sorry, with added cat and sort of general commentary. Invisible Sun is possibly one of the most audacious RPG projects to ever crawl out of the depths of Kickstarter. It's a game that sits somewhere between a role-playing system, a surrealist art installation, and a very expensive way of telling your friends you've got more money than sense. This is an attempt to explain what the hell it is in terms that somebody who already knows their way around RPGs will actually get. So strap in. There'll probably be tangents, there'll definitely be swearing, there'll be a few digs, but by the end I think you'll understand what Invisible Sun is, roughly how it works, and why some people think it's the most important thing since D&D, while others just think it's a big lump of artsy nonsense. It's what happens if you drop too much DMT while playing Mage of the Ascension, where the GM is an esotericist who genuinely believes that magic is real, and then while still high, you wander into an art gallery full of surrealists and get into a conversation with David Icke, who in this scenario is also high as fuck. That's the kind of territory that we're in. The pitch kind of goes like this. The normal world that you think you live in, you know, Tesco, Netflix, exams, bills, that sort of thing, that's not real. It's fake. Ersatz, mock, faux, not the genuine article. It's all bollocks. It doesn't matter. It's a dream, a distraction, a shadow, they call it. It's a sort of Matrix light, or the prison reality found in Gnosticism, which Matrix, of course, riffed off. But you peasants will only know about the Matrix. The actuality, the real world, is actually a strange, magical, sometimes nightmarish place where wizards, or Vizsla, roam cities that are built out of paradox, where nightmares chew at the edges of reality and truth is always a little bit slippery. You were trapped here, in the shadow, in the false world, after seeking it out to hide from the war, whatever that was, but you've remembered who you are and have stepped back into the real world of the actuality from the shadow. Oh, and there's also a magical thing called the Wellspring, which is also a set of introductory scenarios that aren't really adventures, but there is, therefore, a well actuality. You don't play a scrappy little murder hobo with a sword, the libido of a testosterone-poisoned rabbit, and a few coppers to rub together. You're already a bloody wizard. Trouble is, so is everyone else. At least everyone that isn't an angel, demon, tulpa, dream denizen, little god, or other aspect of weirdness. Your character starts powerful, competent, and plugged into magic, and only gets more so. The game is less about getting loot, which is a bit odd given the box is loot, and more about what does a powerful magician actually do when they've got the power to reshape their own life and bend reality. In my experience with most groups, what usually happens is that the players seize up with choice paralysis and look helplessly towards the GM to give them a bit of a push. In that instance, that's not a criticism or a dig necessarily, it's just the way that some people are with games, and that is fine. They prefer something more mission-led, where they can be pointed in the right direction. Other players are perfectly happy to play in a less directed way and to come up with their own motivations, without the GM constantly chivying them along. For those sorts of players, and GMs who don't mind improvising, that'll work out nicely, though it does come with its own set of independent problems. So if D&D is about dungeon crawling, Call of Cthulhu is about surviving the abyss, and something like Blades in the Dark is about crime in a haunted city, then Invisible Sun is about living as a magician in a surreal, magical society. It's kind of slice of life, but with occultists instead of high schoolers. The structure of the world of Invisible Sun is a ladder of suns. Each one is a whole reality or plane with its own tone. Bright, hopeful places, twisted places, broken realms, surreal dreamscapes. You can travel between them, moving from weird metaphysical realm to another. One session might feel like Planescape, the next like Unknown Armies, and the next like a particularly bad trip after you took the wrong mushrooms, went to play miniature golf and found out that the local furry fan club was having an outing there, in costume. Touchstones, for me, culturally, to try and grok Invisible Sun might include Indigo Prime, The Filth, The Invisibles, some of Alan Moore's weirder, more magical works, China Mayville's Crobuzon books, though those are a lot more grounded despite their weirdness. Invisible Sun is a lot less grounded and a lot more rarefied than that, but it can point you in the right direction. Each of these suns that exist has a theme. The Silver Sun is birth, beginnings, potential, creation, and the past. It's the start of any journey. The Green Sun is life, growth, flourishing, and prosperity. It embodies parenting, nature, living things, both wild and savage, and beautiful and serene. The Blue Sun is dreams, the unnoticed, the future. It's less about solid reality and more about hopes, sleep, subconsciousness, and things that are felt or impending but not yet manifest. The Indigo Sun is truth, clarity of perception and ideas. It's a realm of revelation. It is the realm most associated with the real world of the actuality and contains Satyrine, which is the city in which most games will probably spend most of their time. The Grey Sun is the location of shadow, illusion, and distortion. It's tied to our reality, which isn't really real. It's not quite real, more like a reflection or a distortion or a lie, and it's where many Vizsla went to hide during the war, whatever that was. The Pale Sun is death, less a state of being dead and more a realm that deals with whatever is beyond mortal life, ghosts, the passage to the other world, thin lines between life and afterlife. The Red Sun is destruction, annihilation, and change. It is chaos, remaking, ruptures in reality, dangerous, alien, powerful, full of demons, that sort of place. And the Gold Sun is new beginnings, redemption, mercy, forgiveness. It's the turnaround sun, offering transformation and second chances. The Invisible Sun is the secret ninth sun, not on the path, but the source of the power and the source of the path. Magical power, energy, mystery, everything flows from the Invisible Sun. It's less a realm that you visit and more a underlying substructure to everything else. Now, canny listeners would have seen some similarities to the Tree of Life from Kabbalah and all the rest, especially if they've played Cult. And yeah, there's obvious similarities. It's clear to me that Invisible Sun draws on but then distorts a whole bunch of real-world magical practices for whatever reason, and goes to great pains to say that none of the magic in Invisible Sun is real in any way, but the trouble is that's also true of all magic. And there are chaotes out there and Goetians who do things like try to summon Cthulhu entities on the somewhat flimsy basis that anything the human mind creates has some sort of reality somehow, somewhere. It's too complicated to explain right now, but just simply saying that magic is fictional will not rescue it from people trying to use it and claiming that it works. So, fruitless endeavour. Might as well have just drawn on real esotericism. Anyway, these other suns are strange dream realities with their own rules and aesthetics. Some of them are hopeful, some of them are grotesque, some are utterly alien, and each one also has a night side, which is not exactly an evil version, but a sort of mirror image. Oh, and mirrors are evil, and they're a reality virus that tries to infect the world. Don't ask me why. So, if you're playing this, it is not a dungeon crawl, it is not a straight fantasy world, it is a montage of Planescape, Sandman comics, and someone's dream journal after too much cheese. You might have a session where you wander through a ramshackle and damaged city where architecture follows the rules of paradox. The next, you're slipping through the nightmares of some half-dead god trying to retrieve some lost prayer or something. And then you're back home trying to balance your magical research with keeping your family safe, or your friends safe, or whatever. It's weird, but it's a semi-coherent kind of weird. It's sort of mental or philosophical oobleck. There is a consistency to it, even if it's baroque as hell and doesn't act like you think it should. You don't roll up a fighter or a rogue here. No, you play a Vizsla, a magician who has awakened from the shadow. You start already competent. Your archetype comes from a little sort of Mad Lib style formula that defines your concept. I am a foundation, heart of the order who forte. So you might end up with I am an established ardent of the Order of Vance who bears a halo of fire, or I am an avowed stoic of the Order of Makers who shepherds the dead, or I am a burnt out game designer who just keeps going. For example, off the top of my head, this will be familiar to anyone who plays Numenera cipher systems of any kind. So each of those choices ties you into a magical order, which is your class of sorts, but not really, a personality path, and a unique shtick or obsession that you have. Unlike D&D, where your fighter might just be a fighter, here your character is always tied into things symbolic and thematic, yet also quite set in a game that is otherwise wide open. And that seems to me to be a constant and consistent problem across versions of Cypher and games that draw on Cypher ideas. You can be anything in these specific and well-defined ways. And this is where the game starts to show its teeth a little bit. Invisible Sun isn't really about winning, it's about becoming. Your character is defined by their secrets, by their philosophical positions, by the strange obsessions that they chase, and their story arcs. It's more mage than D&D, but even mage looks straight-laced compared to this, and its system is more consistent. If D&D is about kicking down doors and nicking treasure, and something like Call of Cthulhu is about staring into the abyss until it stares back and invites you to dinner, then Invisible Sun is about escaping this prison of normality and relearning to live as a wizard or Vizsla in a world made of secrets, dreams, and lies. It's escapism, but it's dream logic escapism, the disjointed madness of hallucination or art. It is arty. It is hella pretentious. It's weird. But if you buy into the whole conceit of the game, it's not quite like anything else on your shelf, even though I've called out similarities to things like Cult, Mage, Unknown Armies, and so on. It's not really like any of those things. So what do you do in the game? The short version is that you live a magical life. The game is about weaving storylines around pursuing personal obsessions, delving into bizarre realms, gathering secrets and magical truths and power, dealing with rivals, allies and cabals, deciding how you want to use your power and what it turns you into. There will be fights with monsters, cults and nightmares, but combat is not the core. The system does support it, but this isn't about tactical minis on a grid, it's about choices, mystery, character arcs. It's very much like someone took Vampire the Masquerade's obsession with personal drama, sprinkled it with Planescape's weirdness, and then wrapped it in the philosophical what is truth themes of Mage. Spoiler, truth is what your character makes it. And then, weirdly, with all of that in the background, you decide to play House, which seems important for some reason and kept leaping out at me from the pages. No, Rebecca, I don't want to play House with you. Satan willing, I'll have 40, 50 or even 60 years of playing House to look forward to in the future. So for right now, I'm going to pretend the climbing frame is the Millennium Falcon and I'm Han Solo. Okay? Have fun drinking your bullshit imaginary tea and picking out invisible curtains. Life's too short. I may have leftover issues from primary school. Mechanically, Invisible Sun is lighter than something like D&D, but heavier than a purely narrative game. It is a sort of subspecies of the Cypher system with recognisable aspects to it, but like so many deceptively simple systems, it's what's constructed on top of that weighs it down. In this case, the numerous magical subsystems and the many different defined types of power and descriptors. You're juggling spells, secrets, token resources, all in constant interplay with your sheet, and with a world that is too big to make sense of in a single reading. There's also this built-in idea that the story keeps moving even when you're not actively playing. Your character has downtime during which plots advance, things happen off-screen, and so on. It leans into the idea of the campaign as an ongoing piece of weird fiction rather than as a string of quests that you get involved in. To the point where it might work best as an asynchronous forum, email or chat room game, but then you'll miss out on all the props, which is part of the point really, and Invisible Sun does love its props. There's the Sooth deck, which is a tarot-like deck that affects magic and fate. Each session begins with cards drawn, changing the metaphysical weather and the way that certain things work. There are tokens for various things. There are cards for spells, objects, and other doodads. There are envelopes and handouts galore, even a six-fingered hand of glory. And the black cube itself, the big box, is a lovely thing. Me and the cats love a good box. Instead of leveling by XP, sort of, though there are experience points, you advance by pursuing story arcs, which are unique to each player. So you might set yourself a story arc of, I don't know, finding a lost mentor, or building a magical school, or overthrowing a rival that you have. This is one of the strongest ideas in the game. It makes your progression directly tied to narrative. This is something that's been brought into other Cypher and Cypher adjacent products, but it's a lot less central in those other games. And it's also one of the big problems, I think. You ask players to build unique, special characters that mean something to them, and to give them story arcs that motivate those characters and define them in a very big way. They encourage them to do stuff, and then you tie character advancement and character growth to progress on these story arcs, and then you expect players with wildly different story arcs to work together when they have precious little reason to do so or need to do so, since they're all now being pulled in wildly different directions and, given the nature of the game, are already pretty powerful. So yeah, I'm not sure that works unless you can come up with group goals. Now, you can't talk about Invisible Sun without talking about the cube. The Kickstarter box came as this massive, heavy black cube full of books, props, cards, tokens, handouts, and other strange ephemera. It's a coffee table RPG that won't fit on a coffee table. It's a statement piece that will just lurk there, shaming you from your shelf or wherever you put it. The cube itself is supposed to feel like an occult artifact that you pull down off the shelf before the ritual of the game, and some of the expansions and so on are the same way. The Nightside Guide and its warded bag are an example of that, though the bloody book doesn't fit to come out of the bag very easily, which is super annoying. This is all fitting, and suits the game, I suppose. But it can be a little bit unsettling, you know, if you're taking down this occult looking object and setting up a weird six-fingered hand, and you have all these bags and there's runes and everything over everything. It's a little uncomfortable to lift into that and the kind of ritualistic mode of play if you have PTSD from the Satanic Panic, when we were insisting to a bunch of church ladies that, you know, magic isn't real, we don't believe any of this shit. Which is a long way from where we are today. The trouble with the cube and the game as a whole is that it is so bloody expensive. We're talking hundreds of dollars. Now, I got a pretty good deal on the reissue and happened to be flush many months ago when I ordered it. Not so much now. Monte Cook positioned it as a luxury RPG experience, which is a bit wanky, like paying out thousands of dollars to go to one of those D&D on a boat or in a castle things. I mean, you're still meeting up to play D&D. Is it really worth all that money? I don't know. The idea of role-playing games as a luxury brand kind of offends the part of me that's more socialistic or anarchistic. To me, role-playing games are supposed to be about imagination more than consumer goods and doodads. I mean, if you like your consumer goods and doodads, that's all well and good, but the core of it, I think, was always something different. Part of the appeal, at least for me, has been that for a relatively small investment in any individual book, you can potentially get hours upon hours, days, weeks, months, years of entertainment, friends, marriages, conventions to go to, all of that. The hidden value of a game book is vast. Yet Invisible Sun leans hard into its luxury branding, and a lot of the conversation about it has been whether that was brilliance or arrogance. I've talked about boutique tabletop games before, I'm fairly sure. I think I did a history of boutique RPGs. It really started, just to sort of briefly touch on it, with Nobili, or Noblins as we call it, due to an unfortunate misreading of a spine. And that was explicitly published as a coffee table book, and it sold incredibly well. This idea of the luxury brand RPG really kind of starts there, but it has occurred more and more through crowdfunding, with all kinds of jazzy gubbins and special leather-bound editions and so on. Yeah, big, expensive, shiny things which will probably never have any use for, but which future me has to pay for and put somewhere, and that present me, who is a rube and a sucker, has to sign up for. So, you know, future me can suck it. You could strip all of this down to PDFs, and you could summarize a lot of the rules and so on a lot more simplistically. You could play it with some index cards and so on, no problem. But then you don't get to show off your giant black cube of death like a goth magician with a Lego set. Of course, the physicality of it all isn't of a great help to me, and I suspect to many of you, living my remote hermit life, as I am, and only seeing people to play games in meat space with every couple of months. And because it's so prop heavy, it is not conducive to online play. If your target audience is rich people with friends who also happen to do too much DMT and regularly converse with machine elves, then you've essentially whittled down your audience to Joe Rogan. And if it doesn't involve grunting and latent homoeroticism, he isn't interested. So then for most people, and alas for me, I suspect that the Black Cube is really the ultimate shelf queen, a shelf empress, perhaps, rather. It's dripping with art school pretension, and I dropped out of art school. It's a game that wants to be taken seriously as a work of surrealist art, not just as a pastime. But that, to me, seems a rather quixotic quest. No one's ever going to take games seriously outside of other gamers. The prose in the book is thick to the point of impenetrability, the concepts dense, the ostentatious application of prolix and hyper-elaborated circumlocution in lieu of quotidian parlance and vocabulary engenders a state of epistemic confusion in the consciousness of whoever among ludic practitioners possesses the requisite audacity to essay the experiential crucible of this diversion. I mean, there's a certain joy that I get from playing around with language to seem big and clever, even though I mispronounced quotidian. There we go. Bad as Trump in my own subtle way. But yes, there's a certain joy that I get from playing around with language to seem big and clever, but it's not for everyone, and it's kind of undermined when you fuck up one of the pronunciations. Half the time here, it feels like Monte Cook is trying to outdo himself in terms of metaphor, splattered over what is otherwise a simple and elegant system, though it ends up buried under subsystems, linguistic obfuscation, and over-elaboration. There is a genuinely good game buried in here. The narrative arcs, the focus on secrets, the surreal setting, these are all fantastic tools for creating memorable campaigns between you. If you strip away the pomp and focus on play, Invisible Sun can deliver something you won't get out of a dungeon crawl or a heist game. I just think it's fantastically unlikely that most groups will get that out of it. It simply requires too much that has become too difficult to acquire. There was a time in my life when this would have been utterly brilliant for me. Living in a house, shared with other gamers, plenty of free time, lots of disposable income. Yeah, that's kind of where a bunch of my Meat Space group is still at, and they have played Invisible Sun and had a great deal of fun with it, which kind of proves my point. But these are also seasoned gamers, weaned on story gaming, and with a broad diet of games that they have read and played. Their house collection dwarfs even my expansive game archive. With Invisible Sun, all that potential is buried, even smothered, under a mountain of "isn't this deep" packaging. I mean, I can try some comparisons. In D&D you start at level 0 and grind to hero. Treasure and XP, straightforward. Invisible Sun starts you already powerful, and progression is about who you become, not what you loot. In Mage the Ascension, there are comparisons to be made. Both games are about wizards shaping reality, truth being subjective, and philosophy as a weapon. Invisible Sun is more dreamlike, less tied to politics. It's like a mage game that only plays in Horizon realms and never even touches the real world. You could compare to Planescape, with multiversal weirdness, philosophical factions, surreal cities. Invisible Sun has a similar vibe, just even more self-indulgent and chaotic. Unknown Armies could be a point of comparison, personal obsessions and weird magic. Invisible Sun is basically Unknown Armies if you had an infinite budget and no editor telling you to calm down, and also if the magic were actually ever worth casting. Playing Invisible Sun is a bit like being in a prog rock band. Half the audience thinks you're geniuses, pushing the boundaries of the form. The other half thinks you're a bunch of twats noodling away for 20 minutes on a drum solo when you could have just played the fucking song. Get to the bridge. If you've got a group that loves surrealism, occult aesthetics, narrative-driven play, and so on, Invisible Sun can be brilliant. If your group just wants to kill goblins and get paid, they'll bounce right off it. The game uses pseudo-profundity as a filter mechanism in much the same way that 4chan uses ostentatious racism. It's not the future of RPGs, it's not going to replace your 5e campaign. It is not designed or built to be widely available or popular in that sense. It is a Michelin star restaurant. It is a spring onion foam with radish air. But it is bold and glorious. It's an Icarian experiment, and if you can swallow the pretension, it's definitely worth a look. Invisible Sun is the most Monte Cook game Monte Cook has ever Monte Cooked. It is over-designed, over-packaged, oozing with pretension, but also full of genuinely clever and neat mechanics, a strong narrative focus, and a setting that can deliver stories that no other RPG really tackles, or would necessarily want to. It's expensive, it's indulgent, it's half art installation, half playable game. It will likely languish in a cupboard or on your shelf, But if you ever wanted to play an RPG that's basically, what if the Sandman was your campaign setting and your character arc was more important than your stat sheet, then Invisible Sun is probably your jam, or your Marmalade, or maybe your Marmite. If you haven't, well, there's always GURPS, I guess. To me, Invisible Sun has 4 major flaws that eat away at its ambition and prevent me from fully enjoying it. First, its impenetrability. There is too much information to take in too quickly, even just in the basic box. As a games master, you are going to choke on that, let alone the poor players. But you can maybe accommodate them a little bit by trickling information out to them during play so they don't have to take it all on board at once. It's also rendered impenetrable by the choice of complex language, substitute terms and neologisms, which all make it very hard to follow. Secondly, its practicality, or lack thereof, the price, the props, the near necessity of playing it in meat space, and the types of players and the level of buy-in and commitment and talent you'd need to have from them all stand against it as being a practical game to have and to play. Thirdly, the lack of goals. In D&D, you raid dungeons, get richer, get more powerful, so you can raid bigger dungeons and fight big bads and save the world, right? The play loop is pretty basic and obvious, at least in a standard game. In Vampire, it's about accumulating political and arcane power so that you can exert control over the world around you and guarantee your own eternal safety. In Mage, you're engaged in a battle for the soul of reality itself. In Invisible Suns, you are powerful wizards in an otherworldly realm who... what? Playhouse? What am I even supposed to be doing here? Fourthly, there is the lack of grounding. In many ways, the other weird sci-fi game, The Strange, is the inverse of Invisible Sun. You make expeditions from the real world into other realms and return with cool stuff to help shape our reality and your personal power. But it has a grounding in reality. It has a real world to return to where things make sense. In Invisible Sun, the real world we dwell in is just one of many shadow realms that aren't real, and nothing about our real world matters, except that it was a hiding place for our characters during a magical war that is less defined than Doctor Who's paradoxical Time War. As such, there is no hook, no familiarity, no grounding to the game or its world at all. You're just kind of set adrift in a world of dream logic and nonsense. It might seem like I'm fixating on the flaws, but I feel that they're important, and the upside to the game is already pretty obvious, I think. The ambition, the art, the quality, the doodads, and in all their shininess, the intellectual and artistic stimulation that the game provides. And if you enjoy reading things and puzzling things out, you'll enjoy just consuming the work. It's just important, I think, to know what you're getting into here before you lay down, 500 smackaroos or whatever. So, scores then. And it seems rather gauche to reduce this to scores, but let's do it anyway, because fuck it. Style, 5. There is absolutely no way of getting around that this is a fantastically neat project and an impressive act of logistics to get all these pieces together in one place at all. So some of the artwork's not to my taste. It has the muddiness that I always complain about, but it is, again, like the game itself, ambitious, different. There is nothing else quite like it. The build quality is great. Everything about it is good stylistically. Unreserved 5. Substance 2. Shocking, I know. Yes, there is a complete, playable, even elegant game here, and a lot of fantastic ideas, so that would normally be at least a 3, and given the sheer expansive amount of material that there is for this game, in terms of background, books, all the rest of it, you might expect me to give it even a 4, or perhaps a 5. But all of that content all of that substance is buried so deep and obscured so much that reading and learning the game is like trying to decode the Voynich manuscript, armed only with a comedic Hungarian to English dictionary. I hate it when games refuse to be pinned down and when they hide important material in the purple prose of frustrated authors. I'm running the thing. Tell me what's real and true. Give me something solid to hook onto in this game world, and I am happy to run it. Leave it too wibbly wobbly and even the GM has nothing to hold on to. Now, I'm sure someone will be along in the comments to tell me I'm stupid or don't get it or something, but this isn't like my rational and entirely justified hatred of Powered by the Apocalypse. It's my frustration and my reservations at the level of expense, what you pay and what you get, and how usable the content that you get is. This is something they've acknowledged and they've tried to address with the Enchiridion, but I don't think that they really have. So that gives the ominous Black Cube a total score of 7 out of 10 or 3.5 out of 5. Now it's slightly above average, so if you've got the money, I think it is an important and interesting artifact of the role-playing hobby, but I also think it's only really for collectors, archivists, ludic historians and Monte Cook fans. Primarily because of the price and because it's very likely to just languish on your shelf. Zang. Howdy, I heard you like videos. If you're not already watching on YouTube, you should toddle on over to YouTube and you should subscribe to Post-Mortem Video, all one word, and you should click subscribe, and you should click the little bell, and you should select all when you click the little bell, and whatever other hoops that YouTube now has you jump through in order to actually be subscribed. Basically, subscribe to my YouTube channel.